This awesome LED clock is a quite simple project that nearly everyone can make. It can function as a clock, can be LED decoration, or it can just be a nice piece of decoration when turned off. Bought locally. Each ping pong ball will have its own LED behind it. To get as much light as possible to shine through, a piece of the back side of the ping pong balls needs to be removed, so the light of the LED only has to go through one side of the ball. These holes need to be quite large, approximately 30 mm, since the LEDs will not be centered behind the balls. After making large holes in all the ping pong balls, they need to be glued together in rows, 2 rows of 17, 18 and 19, and 1 row of 20. These rows should be as straight as possible and there should be no space between the balls. I used the wood I bought to build the frame to do this. By having the balls supported by the 2 pieces of wood, I was certain that they were in one line. After placing a few balls, whilst making sure the holes were facing up and the balls were touching each other, I glued them together. A very little bit of glue is enough to do this. If you use too much glue, it will be visible from the front. I used a flashlight again this tone to make sure ping pong balls did not have ugly spots on the front side. Some had those since it were cheap balls. To do this, I used the wood for the frame to keep 2 rows pressed together. Keep in mind to use small drops of glue. If you use too much, it will be visible from the front. After placing glue on around 8 connections at a time, I provided pressure with my hands to make sure the balls were glued tight together. The frame exists out of 6 pieces. 2 long pieces and 4 short. All the edges of these pieces should have a 60-degree angle. Since the size of my ping pong balls wasn't exactly 40 mm, but 39.5 something, I calculated the approximate length of the frame pieces. This can be done by measuring the height or width of the panel and using a squared plus b squared equals c squared. I calculated that the inside length of the 2 long pieces should be 66.3 centimeters, and the inside of the 4 short pieces should be 14.3 centimeters. Since my saw was not too accurate, I made sure to cut them a bit larger, so they would not be too short. The lead strip needs to be cut, 1 piece of 1 lead, 1 piece of 3 leads, 1 piece of 5 leads and 17 pieces with 7 leads. The pieces of LED strip need to be wired as can be seen in the image, first a piece of 1 lead, then the 5 leads, next 17 pieces with 7 leads and finally the piece with 3 leads. The wire that connects the shorter pieces of the strip should be longer than the other pieces since it needs to cover a greater distance. I taped the strip on a piece of MDF to see if each lead would be behind its own ball. After soldering all the pieces together, I tested if all the solder connections were good, by activating each LED one by one. Check if LEDs are behind balls. When the frame was done, I placed the frame and the ping pong ball panel over the MDF which had the LEDs taped to it. After making sure each LED was after its own ball, I removed the ping pong ball panel. Next, I drew along the inside of the frame on the MDF, to get the shape I needed to cut out. I did it this way because the LEDs are not centered behind the balls, and this way I have the relative position of the LEDs to the frame. After removing the LEDs that were taped to the board, I cut out the shape of the panel and sanded the edges, so it fitted nicely inside the frame. As could be seen previously, the wire connecting the LEDs is kinda in the way. The way it is right now, the wire will be visible from the front. I decided to solve this by drilling holes on the end of the location of each vertical strip of LEDs, so the wire can go on the back side. I weaved the LED strip through the holes and temporarily taped it down. After making sure that again, each LED would be behind its own ping pong ball, I removed the tape and connected the LED strip to the board with the glue strip that is already on the LED strip. I placed the panel of ping pong balls upside down in the frame. Then I applied glue on every point where the ping pong balls touched, or barely touched the frame. I placed the LED panel on top of the back side of the balls. Next, I used 4 small nails to attach the panel to the frame. I did this by placing the nails on the inside of the frame. I chose to do it this way since it allows me to fix something if it ever breaks. It also allows me to double the number of LEDs, since too many lumens does not exist. Okay, I have almost no experience with Arduino, so this might not be perfect. But I tried to do this in as simple way as possible. When uploading code, make sure the power supply is off. This project can be so much more than a basic clock. You can add buttons, make it change brightness depending on the light, have it display just some colors, make it reactive to music, connect it to Wi-Fi with an especially. It's basically an Arduino connected to a display. everything is possible.